Hi, I'm Hal Roberts. This is Bridge City News. Here's some of the top stories we've been following. Alberta Premier Daniel Smith made a campaign stop in Calgary, explaining how our economy has gained a lot of momentum. We have a chat with the NDP candidate for Lethbridge East, who explains where his party stands on a wide range of issues. And we hear about new legislation which passed, preventing Canadian companies from using child slave labor overseas.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Thanks so much for joining us. Alberta Premier Daniel Smith says her party is committed to growing the economy and attracting more skilled workers here to our province. At a campaign stop in Calgary on Thursday, Smith says Alberta's economy has a lot of momentum once again.
Albertans are finding work and Canadians are moving to Alberta in rates not seen in years. For 4 consecutive years, Alberta smashed venture capital records, attracting $729 million in 2022, a 30% increase over 2021's record-breaking year. In the first quarter of 2023, over 5,220 new businesses incorporated in Alberta. Under the UCP government, global companies have made landmark investments demonstrating the massive potential and opportunity we have in Alberta. We've seen our film and television industry take off, attracting huge projects like HBO's The Last of Us and Ghostbusters Afterlife. Alberta is poised to lead the country in development of renewable energy, working alongside our traditional energy sources. We're leading the country in hydrogen production, and with our hydrogen roadmap, we are well on our way to becoming a global leader in clean, low-cost hydrogen.
A prominent politician in southeastern Alberta has decided not to seek re-election on May the 29th. Drew Barnes, who sat as an independent and one-time UCP MLA for Cypress Medicine Hat, will be giving up his seat. Drew joins us now from Medicine Hat with more. Drew, it's been a long and winding road for you. You were first elected under the Wild Rose Party banner back in 2012, then re-elected in both 2015 and 2019 with the UCP. What led to your decision not to run again?
Essentially, my constituents, Cypress Medicine Hatters and Southern Albertans, were telling me that they didn't see a vehicle for one of the mainstream parties providing principled, consistent, effective representation that matched their values. And so at this point in time, I thought it was best for me to look for effectiveness, to look for the things that are important, like faith, families, and freedom, through a different means.
So what is next for you as you leave public life?
Well, thank you. But let me start by, Hal, thanking you and Bridge City News. You guys have been great for allowing me to be a voice for Albertans. But for me, I'm going forward with my political foundation, my political action committee, and I'm going to continue the best as I can to be a voice for the things that are important to Albertans.
Now, what are your thoughts on the upcoming election? Many political experts say it's simply too close to call. They say the NDP has Edmonton, the UCP has rural Alberta, and Calgary is the true battleground. How do you see it?
Hal, the two parties are very, very close, but it's because the two parties have crowded into the middle. We've got platforms that look fairly similar. We have the NDP trying to soften what can be a very devastating socialist policy, and we've got the UCP and Danielle Smith with corporate cronyism, $330 million to Calgary billionaires. They're out today with more welfare, more directing the economy, rather than a truly democratic, truly community-driven economy from the bottom up, from the grassroots up. So yeah, the two parties are similar. So why wouldn't it be close?
Will the investigation by the ethics commissioner really hurt UCP leader Daniel Smith at the polls?
I guess I'll leave that to the ethics commissioner to see what happens. I mean, of course, Premier Smith she's so exposed herself and she was so involved in many things. And in fact, her conversation with whether it was Pastor Arthur or some of those other things where, the NDP is calling to see if she overstepped her bounds. Hal, what would be best is a campaign that's based on smaller government, lower taxes, more freedom, more faith, more families, and hopefully Premier Smith will find her way to that.
Thanks so much, Drew. That was Drew Barnes, who will not be seeking re-election on May 29th as an independent candidate in the Cypress Medicine Hat riding. The Alberta election is just over 3 weeks away now. Rob Miyashiro is the NDP candidate for Lethbridge East. Miyashiro says a big part of his party's platform is healthcare and ensuring more Albertans have access to a family physician.
Our plan is to have 1 million more Albertans have access to a family doctor in the next while. And that's our goal. And it's a lofty goal, but it's something we're going to accomplish, with things like our family health teams. And supporting communities to develop family health clinics where you can have a general practitioner and other specialists as a team with allied health professionals to help serve more people so they always don't have to see a doctor, but the doctor's available if you need it.
Make sure you catch the full interview with NDP Lethbridge East candidate Rob Miyashiro and BCN's Jeanette Rocher coming up after Business News. Parliamentarians held a news conference on Parliament Hill to discuss the passage of a private member's bill, S211. The legislation would require Canadian companies to ensure they're not using forced or child labor in their production overseas. The final vote was passed in the Senate on May 3rd.
A concern that the Canadian public has had about the way in which Canadians advertently or inadvertently consume slave-made goods. I'm sure that no one here would argue that that's a good thing. If you can't accept the moral argument, then accept the economic argument. On economic grounds, it's utterly stupid.
At World Vision, our supporters for many years have told us that they envision a world where no child has to work in what we call 3D jobs: dirty, dangerous, or degrading. And after a decade of advocacy at World Vision, we can say that Canada is now taking meaningful steps to begin addressing the risks of child labor and forced labor in our global supply chain. This has been something that World Vision has been engaged in publicly since 2012, and it's grounded in our experience as we've talked to our colleagues working with children and families in some of the most challenging parts of the world. I personally have been to Bangladesh, where I met Tanya, who works all night long at the age of 14, deveining shrimp, being prevented from going to school. Or hearing stories from Oscar, who since the age of 8 has had to cut coffee with dangerous tools, not being able to experience the opportunity to go to school.
The Tory MP, whose family was allegedly targeted by a Chinese diplomat, says Canada's intelligence agency sent a report of the incident to government officials back in 2021. Michael Chong says CSIS gave the report to the Prime Minister's National Security Advisor. That contradicts Trudeau, who said CSIS did not share the information.
CSIS has been advising the government, the departments, the Privy Council Office, the National Security Advisor, deputy ministers, that foreign agents in Canada, foreign diplomats in Canada are presenting a threat to Canadian MPs in this House of Commons. In fact, the 2022 intelligence report of CSIS today says that these threat actors must be held accountable for their clandestine activities. And we also will continue to inform national security stakeholders and all Canadians about foreign interference. So why is the government not listening to the advice of CSIS and not listening to the advice in the reports that are being distributed here?
Prime Minister Trudeau and Public Safety Minister Marco Menincino both insist the government only learned about it from a report in the Globe and Mail on Monday. Striking Canada Revenue Agency workers are back on the job after their union reached a tentative contract agreement with the federal government. Over 120,000 Public Service Alliance of Canada members in many other departments reached similar agreements earlier this week. They're expected to vote on whether or not to accept the deals in the next few weeks. The group represents workers at a wide range of agencies, including Service Canada, and Refugees and Citizenship Canada is urging its members to vote against it. It says the tentative deal provided an increase of 12.6% and does not increase wages enough and does not enshrine work-from-home provisions. While we've been well above our seasonal average for this time of year in southwestern Alberta, which is around 16 degrees, Jeanette Rocher is now with a quick peek at the forecast. Jeanette, may the 4th be with you. You know, it appears as though warm temperatures may be leaving us and the rain cloud should be arriving just in time for the weekend.
Yeah, well, if the forests were actually with me, Hal, then I'd be making it rain during the work week instead of the weekend. But I'm sure our farmer friends will be loving it as it's been so dry. And speaking of dry, it was another scorcher today. We reached almost 30 degrees, lots of sunshine. Even our overnight low this evening down to 11, which is way warmer than the average low for this time of year, which is only 2 degrees. Another hot one expected tomorrow, Friday, 27 degrees and lots of sunshine. We could feel some wind from the east as well, up to 40 kilometers per hour before getting into that Friday evening rain, that moisture we were talking about. And I'll be back later in the show to give you that weekend forecast and how it's going to look like a much different story than what we've been seeing the past few days.
Great. Thanks so much, Jeanette. 2 Alberta lawyers are facing charges in connection with an incident in which a private investigator was hired to follow a judge during the COVID-19 pandemic. John Carpe, the president of the Justice Centre for Constitutional Freedoms, and Randall J. Cameron face charges under the Law Society of Manitoba. Some of the charges include undermining the public respect for the administration of justice and a failure to treat court with fairness. A hearing date has not yet been set. The 2 lawyers also face criminal charges for attempting to obstruct justice and intimidation of a justice system participant. Both men represented various churches that tried to overturn public health orders during the pandemic in 2021, which included no in-person worship services. 1 woman is dead and 4 others were wounded following a shooting at a medical facility in Atlanta, Georgia on Wednesday. Officials say the gunman has since been captured.
Thanks to the highly trained police officers across our region, we are able to bring this suspect into custody without further harm. He will be charged and stand trial for his crimes. This took multiple jurisdictions working together, highly trained officers who not only found this suspect, but brought him into custody to stand trial.
Meanwhile, a fight at an electric vehicle charging station in suburban Denver, Colorado, escalated into a fatal shooting that killed a Tesla driver and put another man in custody.
There was an altercation that occurred in the Tesla charging station area in this parking lot. The individual involved in the shooting that actually fired the shot called in to 911 and said that he was involved, and so he's been detained by Edgewater Police and is currently being interviewed.
Police in Serbia say a 13-year-old boy who opened fire at a school drew sketches of classrooms and made a list of people he intended to target. The student killed 8 fellow students and a school guard before being arrested on Wednesday.
Bila je dežurna, bila je sretna. Kamo sreće da je ostala u salonu i sinoć došla s roditeljima.
You know, getting a good night's rest is key to living a healthy lifestyle. That's according to sleep and insomnia expert Lana Walsh. Walsh says when it comes to insomnia, it's important to create a routine to help retrain your brain.
So the first thing is to pick a bedtime and stick to it. And then give yourself a routine of things that you do before bed that you do every time you go to bed. Because your brain craves that routine, and it will start to learn, just like we learned how not to sleep, it will learn over time that, okay, this is the pattern that we follow before we go to sleep.
Make sure you catch the full interview with the Lethbridge insomnia and sleep expert Lana Walsh and BCN's Naveen Day coming up later in our broadcast. The city of Lethbridge is partnering with 2 Guys in a Pizza Place in part with the Curbside Organics program. Customers will see a stamp inside of their pizza boxes to help remind them of where the boxes need to go. The owner of 2 Guys in a Pizza Place says it's important to educate the public on the program, and the stamp is a pretty good reminder.
The city designed the stamp, and they're looking for other businesses to partner on that as well. We just simply stamp a pile of boxes before we fold them, you know, kind of dries up, and then we fold the boxes, and then they're in there. We're mostly doing the bigger size boxes, and when you open it, it'll be inside there, and then it'll be a reminder of where that pizza box goes. You know, we've been a part of the Lethbridge community for 21 years now, and we're proud of that, and you know, our values have always been, you know, great customer service and excellent pizza and food, and if we can do that in a sustainable way as well, and educate the public on this new program.
Now, to celebrate the partnership, the public has a chance to win one of 5 2 Guys Go Green prize packs. The first citywide green card collection will begin on May the 16th. You know, the warm summer-like conditions we've been experiencing in southern Alberta means many summer activities will be resuming once again fairly soon. That includes horse racing. BCN's Naveen Day has that story.
The Kentucky Derby is going to be great, but they're not quite as great as our horses or our riders or our owners or our people.
For those itching to hit the racetrack to see the ponies in action, you're in luck. Beginning this weekend, the Rocky Mountain Turf Club in Lethbridge will kick off their 2023 racing season. They are only one of 6 racing tracks in Alberta. CEO of the RMTC, Max Gibbs, says horse racing is a big component in southern Alberta's blood.
The 2 greatest jockeys, argumentatively, in the 20th century came from southern Alberta. Johnny Longdon from Tabor and George from Cardston. Both of them, if you saw the movie Seabiscuit, there were 3 major jockeys. All 3 were from Alberta, riding Seabiscuit and the competitors of Seabiscuit. So horse race history is southern Alberta history.
The 2023 racing season will feature a total of 32 race days between May 6th and October 9th. And to ensure the races are fairly operated, high above these stands, a team of stewards with Alberta Horse Racing will oversee the races to make sure that each one is conducted in a safe, fair, and honest manner.
They're watching the race right from the gate to wire to make sure that nobody's cutting one another off or there's nothing dangerous amongst the jockeys from one to the other. They're only allowed to hit with their crop 3 times in the race. And they're counting that, just making sure that those horses are looked after, that the jockeys are doing the right thing. Then after the race, they are the ones to say the official finish at the wire, so 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. In betting, we generally have 1st to 3rd, so they'll put that out there and they call it official. And at the official, when they call it official, it goes out on the tote board of what those horses' payout will be.
Admission to the racetrack is free. And for the children and the young at heart adults, there's also a petting zoo with a variety of animals you can encounter. For Bridge City News, I'm Naveen Day.
So cute. He wasn't kidding around there either. Boys and Girls Club Lethbridge has signed a new 10-year agreement to provide the town of Coaldale with childcare services. That will include after-school programming and summer youth camps at the town's new multi-use recreation center expected to open next year. BGC Lethbridge recently received $300,000 from the province's Community Facility Enhancement Program for the construction of an indoor play structure inside of the rec center. The town's Director of Community Services says this new partnership will help to address daycare options, which are quite limited in Coaldale.
Well, during the last campaign, it was apparent that Coaldale had a daycare shortage. And then you factor in the federal announcement of funding for daycares, helping to assist people going back to work. And with that funding in place now, there's more people taking advantage of it. And so there's even a bigger shortage in Coaldale. And so couple that together with the location where this daycare is going to be set right in a brand new recreation center that's going to be very special to Coaldale, but also attached to the new school. It's going to create a lot of synergies.
Officials say providing access to quality childcare in Coaldale will not only encourage healthy childhood development, but will also support working parents and, by extension, the local economy. Well, the scorching hot temperatures will be ending soon in southwestern Alberta, and some much-needed moisture is on the way. A full look at the weather picture is on deck. It has felt so much like summer over the past few days as we've been near record high temperatures across much of southwestern Alberta. Jeanette Roche is now with all of the weather details. Jeanette, we could come close to another record before seeing cooler temperatures and maybe some moisture developing by the weekend?
Yeah, Hal, you're right. The last recorded high on this day was back in 1992. It was just under 29 degrees. We were so close today. We were expecting that high of 30 degrees. Last I checked, we were sitting at 28, so very close. Another scorcher tomorrow, though, 27 for a high, lots of sunshine. And then by Friday evening, that's when that moisture could begin. And you know what? It's just going to stick around all weekend. We're looking at showers on Saturday and Sunday with highs of 12 and 14 degrees for both of those days. days. And then once we get back into the work week, we're looking at highs back up near 20 degrees on both Monday and Tuesday, rounding out that 7-day forecast on Wednesday with a high of 19 degrees. So despite that little bit of a cool dip there and the moisture, we're still looking much higher than the average high for this time of year, which is 16 degrees, average low 2 degrees, 29. That was our high temperature, like I was saying, back in 1992. And the lowest on record was back in 1967. It was sitting at -7. 6:04, that's when the sun rose this morning. Sunset this evening at 8:54 p.m. We're at 14 hours and 50 minutes now of daylight, so very close to that 15-hour mark. Looking at some moisture on the west coast tomorrow, 12 degrees for a high in Victoria with some 40K winds near the Juan de Fuca Strait. Looking at showers throughout the day. Heavy rains in Vancouver, though, looking at 10 to 15 millimeters and up to 40K winds as well. 11 for a high, 25 for a high in Edmonton. Now, Edmonton was sitting under a heat warning. That is in effect until this evening, as we're looking at temperatures over 30 degrees and an overnight low of only 15 or 15. That's actually very warm for this time of year. And so going to be cooling off by Friday. By cooling off, I mean 25 degrees and lots of sunshine. Same thing for Calgary. High of 24 tomorrow with plenty of sunshine. Going to be a lovely one. Same thing for the rest of the prairies. Saskatchewan looking at highs of 18 degrees and lots of sunshine in both Saskatoon and Regina. Winnipeg sitting at 19 with a mix of sun and cloud. As we get to the central part of the country, 16 for a high in Toronto. Looks like the prairies are where it's happening, especially in Alberta tomorrow. Definitely the scorcher there. 16 also for a high in Ottawa and a high of 15 tomorrow in Montreal. Most of these cities also looking at cloud coverage in the morning and then clearing throughout the day as we get into the East Coast. 14 for a high in Fredericton, mix of sun and cloud. High of only 10 degrees in Halifax tomorrow. Charlottetown only sitting at 7, and look at that, high of 1 degree in St. John's, Newfoundland, looking at 2 millimeters of rain and also could see some flurry activity tomorrow as well. So there you have it. That is your forecast.
The leaders of the 3 largest pilot unions are speaking out against a push in the aviation industry toward having a sole crew member in the cockpit by the year 2027. The leader said the proposal to Europe's aviation regulator is aimed at boosting airline profits at the cost of safety. The European Union Aviation Safety Agency is considering the pitch by 2 plane makers for some aircraft to be crewed by just 1 pilot for part of the flight, though not during takeoff or landing. Currently, a 2-pilot system is required throughout the duration of a flight. E-commerce giant Shopify is cutting 20% of its workforce. It is also selling its logistics business to supply chain management firm Flexport. Company officials say it will better allow Shopify to focus on its main goal of making commerce easier. Chief Executive Toby Lutka says technological progress always arcs towards simplicity, and entrepreneurs succeed more when we simplify. Shopify's share price was up almost 26% to $79.36 just after the market opened. Stats Canada says our country posted a merchandise trade surplus of $972 million in March as imports fell more than exports. The surplus compared with a revised deficit of $487 million in February. The agency says total imports fell by $62.6 billion, or 2.9%. That's the lowest observed since March of last year. But total exports fell 0.7% to $63.6 billion. Now, here's a look at today's markets. The TSX was down 116 points on the day to finish at 20,238. The Dow was down 286 points to 33,127. The S&P 500 was down 29 on the day to 4,061. And the NASDAQ was down 58 points to 11,966. West Texas Intermediate Oil was down 4 cents to $68.56 U.S. per barrel. Natural gas was down 7 cents to $2.10 U.S. Gold was down a cent to $2,050.27 U.S. an ounce. And silver was even on the day at $26.05 U.S. an ounce. Feed wheat is at $11 per bushel, barley's at $8.92, canola's at $16.14, and corn is at $10.05 per bushel. Live cattle were down 8 cents to $161.58. That's for the June contract. Feeder cattle were up 23 cents to $203.65, and lean hogs were down $1.08 to $77.08. The Canadian dollar was up slightly over the past 24 hours to $73.87 U.S. Recapping one of our top stories, striking Canada Revenue Agency workers are back on the job after the union reached a tentative contract agreement with the federal government. Over 120,000 Public Service Alliance of Canada members and many other departments reached similar agreements earlier this week. They're expected to vote on whether or not to accept the deals in the next few weeks. You know, as we lead up to the May 29th Alberta election, we're chatting with a number of candidates in various ridings to see where they stand on a wide range of issues. Coming up, Jeanette Rocher chats with NDP Lethbridge East candidate Rob Miyashiro. Listen, if you see news happening in your community, be sure to drop us an email at info@bridgecitynews.ca. We'd love to hear from you.
Here's your Bridge City News community calendar. To honor the memories of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls across Canada, the City of Lethbridge and community partners invite everyone to a Fireside Connection event for Red Dress Day. Taking place May 5th at Gull Gardens from 1 to 2:30 p.m. Experience First Nations drumming, dancing, and an opportunity to connect and share memories of those who have not returned home. Do you have a heart to serve our community? Streets Alive Mission is looking for volunteers to help make sandwiches, sort incoming donations, assist with Foot Friday, and many other opportunities to serve, receive training, and to provide support for this important cause of bringing hope to the hopeless. Visit streetsalive.ca to fill out their volunteer application or call 403-320-1159. And that's today's Bridge City News community calendar.
Well, Alberta's provincial election will take place on May 29th, and today we're speaking with Rob Miyashiro, former Lethbridge City Councillor and the NDP candidate for Lethbridge East. Rob, welcome to Bridge City News. So great to have you on today.
Thanks, Jeanette. Glad to be here.
Okay, wonderful. So you've been a longtime resident of Lethbridge, working with seniors and sitting on council. So can you tell us a bit about yourself and why you decided to take this plunge into provincial politics?
So it's interestingly, so I've lived in Lethbridge a long time. I was born in Lethbridge, grew up in Taber, raised in Taber, I guess I could say. I've worked as a human services professional for a long time, mostly with not-for-profits, but a couple stints in government and also on the Blood Reserve. My driving passion is, I think, to help people. That's kind of what I've been doing for my whole career. The reason I'm running now, so I had decided I was going to quit city council. Or not run again, sorry, in 2021. And one day we were watching the news and our provincial government was doing something kind of offbeat that they were doing at that time. And my wife literally turned to me and said, out of the blue, if you're going to do anything politically ever again, you need to run for the NDP. At which time, seriously, I had not thought of that. And I gave it some thought, talked to some people, and here I am.
Here you are. Okay. So, Rob, what feedback have you received the most about the needs of the residents of Lethbridge East?
You know, in Lethbridge East, it's varied, right? Because we have such a varied economy and we have a lot of different interest groups. So we have crisis issues that people tend to focus on a lot, but not work towards solutions. Housing and homelessness are some issues that need solutions. We don't just need to keep dealing with the symptoms. We need to actually deal with what the problem was, right? So the healthcare is a huge one, right? That's the biggest one. Healthcare, and you know, where we're the Alberta NDP is really believes that every Albertan deserves the proper healthcare and deserves the healthcare that they need when they need it. Right, so we're in a position where many of us have lost physicians and don't have a doctor. We have a third or more of our population doesn't have a family doctor. And I was in that position at one time a year and a half ago, and literally I would have been dead if I didn't have gotten to the doctor. It could have been that week because it diagnosed something that I had no idea, and so I've been fine since then. But if I hadn't had a doctor, and that's the problem that we're with that the Alberta NDP wants to address is let's fix the healthcare crisis. Let's have a way and get our plan is to have 1 million more Albertans have access to a family doctor in the next while. And that's our goal. And it's a lofty goal, but it's something we're going to accomplish, you know, with things like our family health teams. And supporting communities to develop
family health clinics where you can have a general practitioner and other specialists as a team with allied health professionals to help serve more people, so they always don't have to see a doctor, but the doctor's available if you need it. Those are novel approaches, so you don't always. So we're focused on healthcare and the health of people, and to get Albertans the care that they need.
Yeah, definitely healthcare is one of the issues that's tops of mind. It's the top of mind amongst Albertans everywhere. I myself don't have a family doctor anymore as well, so I totally understand that. Now, the NDP has promised to create the family health clinics and expand the hours of medical clinics, as you mentioned there. So can you give us more details about what that would look like?
Yeah, so conceptually, it's as I kind of mentioned before, we want to help support the development of family health clinics, so that you center the work around the patient, you center the work around what the person needs. So if you need to see a GP and you go in and they diagnose something and you get treated, maybe the next time you go there you need to see a respiratory tech, or you need to see someone that's an allied professional that can certainly help and move that patient's care along, but they don't always have to see the family doctor. Even though the family doctor is part of the team, they're not always the one you need to see when you're getting support, right? So as I said before, we want to make sure that 1 million more Albertans are going to have access to a family doctor.
Wow, it's a tall order. So there seems to be a shortage of healthcare professionals throughout North America. So where would you find the additional medical personnel to operate these facilities?
That also combined with our goals on post-secondary education. So you're right. How are we going to find these allied professionals and health professionals? Well, you have to train them. And we're going to have to train them in Alberta. Well, first, obviously, there's going to be a recruitment strategy released right away by our leader this week or early next week about what our recruitment strategy is for healthcare, right? But furthermore to that is to have a sustainable system. You need us to train health professionals in Alberta, then have them stay in Alberta. We don't want to train them here and have them move somewhere else. We have a college university in Lethbridge that we need to fund spaces and fund the instructors to make sure we can train those people here in Lethbridge. Because, and this ties into a whole bunch of other things, because obviously that, and people in Lethbridge know, the college university are two of our biggest employers. So we add spaces for students. We employ more people, we train more people, we have health professionals that can stay in our community and serve our community. And if not our immediate community, they'll stay in Alberta, hopefully, right? And so all those things tie together, and that's how big an economic driver healthcare is in our educational system as well, right? We need to make sure that we're funding our college and university to the levels that they were at before the UCP cut a bunch of their funding, like tens of millions of dollars.
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought up the post-secondary thing, because I was going to ask you any ideas on how to entice more local students to go into medicine so that something like this doesn't happen again.
Well, I think that's something that starts when the students are in school. And I also think, you just step kind of into another thing about having a curriculum that deals with real life issues, a curriculum that's going to serve the kids for their future as well, and not ideological based and based on here's the way life works. If you can get kids interested in STEM, science, technology, engineering, medical things early enough, and have a pathway. So having the UCP rip up the doctor's contract at the onset of the pandemic, have all these doctors leave the practice for whatever reason or leave the province, that's not going to give an incentive to students in high school to say, hey, I'd love to pursue a medical education. But if we have some kind of way to connect kids with being a healthcare professional early on and have the resources to educate them and then have jobs available for them after, that's what's going to create sustainability in not just our healthcare system, but also our education system.
Mm-hmm. Now, Rob, in your mind, is there something that AHS and the government can do to make work better for those frontline workers? I know that they're always working so short-staffed, and I know just recently they had an information picket outside the provincial buildings throughout Alberta. Any ideas there?
It's all part of them feeling supported too. We need a government like the Alberta NDP that's not going to fight with healthcare professionals, right? We need a government that's going to actually support healthcare professionals to do the job, and so that they know they're supported, that they know that they're appreciated by their government to support them in whatever way that means. That means proper equipment, that means proper staffing, that means proper supervision, that means a sound strategy for a healthcare system, so that the frontline people, they can see a good picture of where their system's going, and they don't feel discouraged, and they know someone's got their back. But we're the kind of government that will be a government that has the back of healthcare workers across the province.
Okay, switching gears a little bit here. If there were another pandemic situation in the future, how would an NDP government handle something like that? Would there be more lockdowns, more mandatory vaccinations?
I think the focus though, Jeanette, is on stability in the healthcare system, right? So if you have a fully functioning healthcare system where staff are feeling supported, there's some forward strategizing being done, there's some understanding of what can happen in the world, and a way to react positively to things that are happening in the world. You base your system on the best science available and the best experts available. That helps you to obviously no one could have prepared 100% for the pandemic we just went through. But there were lessons we learned from the influenza pandemic in the early 1900s. And you know what? Those are some lessons that were learned and tried to implement in the COVID-19 pandemic. So I think we learn from what's worked, and we move ahead and do the best practices. I can't predict, and I don't think anyone that's working in government right now can say this is what we're going to do. I think you can model different ways to deal with things, but you just have to be prepared, and you have to have a system that's ready to absorb that kind of crisis. And so you're not putting the system in crisis when the rest of the world's in crisis.
Mm-hmm, yeah. Okay, another top of mind issue amongst Albertans everywhere, inflation. So that seems to always be a beast that needs to be slain. So what are your thoughts on how to deal with inflation and to create an economy that will provide job opportunities for Albertans?
It comes down to affordability things. So inflation it's affected by so many things: supply chain, global price markets. What we can do in Alberta is look at how do we make things more affordable for families and for people, right? So we don't want to increase the provincial income tax. Do we have enough money and can we have a stable economy and stable budget revenue source by doing that? Can we look at things like how do we make insurance more affordable, auto insurance, house insurance? How do we work with municipalities so that we're not taking important revenue streams from municipalities so that they have to increase property taxes? People don't understand that when provincial governments take money from municipalities don't have the ability to have cost overruns. They don't have the ability to go into deficit. That's by law. So the only way they can do it is increase property taxes. If you're in provincial government like ours, you're going to work with the municipalities to make sure we're not creating those affordable issues for our people that live in Alberta. We want to make sure that everything that we're doing, one big thing is things like Aviation and child benefits and Alberta senior benefits. Those during the UCP government were de-indexed to inflation. And all of a sudden inflation goes up, as you were talking about. So all of a sudden the buying power of someone that's making X dollars is that much less. And what we want to do is make sure we re-index those kinds of things, right? And keep making sure that as inflation goes up, the most minimalized and marginalized in our population are looked after, and as well as the middle class that has huge affordability issues.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, last time your leader was Premier Rachel Notley, the province did go into a multi-million-dollar budget deficit. So that trend, obviously, it sounds like you're trying to work away from that trend under the NDP government. So do you believe that would change through what you're sort of proposing there?
Right. Well, it's interesting because you also have to look at other factors in the economy, right? And people need to understand it's not everything in the province that affects our economy. It's global marketplace, just as I said about inflation. It's how do we make it better for Albertans? So what we need to do is we need to create, unlike the UCP government that gave billions of dollars of taxpayers' money to oil companies. They gave them to oil companies for whatever incentive they were going to give them. The companies took that money, moved their head offices out of Alberta. That was $4 billion. I think that we'll never get back. We'll never see again. $4 billion and now would have made a big difference in services and supports to everybody else. We're also looking at diversifying the economy and leveraging our energy sector to create products and goods and services in a different kind of way. How do we use our bitumen in a different way? We have a strong legacy in energy in Alberta. We've always been an energy leader, right? So and we have our legacy in oil and gas is beyond compared to any other province. So what we need to do is continue that kind of legacy as an energy leader and look at not just oil and gas, but continue to support the oil and gas industry, but also look at how we're going to pivot to supporting agriculture. Oil and gas. So people in Lethbridge in southern Alberta certainly are concerned about our economy and how we're going to pay for things, and how that's going to pay for the government. However, in southern Alberta, Jeanette, that we're the center of agriculture and ag processing in Alberta. Well, in Western Canada, right? We have what's been known as the Canada's agriculture processing corridor in southern Alberta. More processing facilities and more agriculture per capita than anywhere else in Canada. We need to make sure in southern Alberta and Lethbridge that we're continuing to support the agriculture industry to do the things that they need to do to feed Albertans and beyond. Because that's what drives our economy here as much as, well, more than anything else.
Thanks so much for being with us today, Rob.
Thanks, Jeanette. Always a pleasure to talk to you.
You know, nothing feels better than waking up after a great night's sleep. Yet, there are some disorders that can hamper that awesome feeling you experience after several hours of lovely rest. Lana Walsh is a local sleep expert, and she has dedicated her career to help people overcome insomnia and other sleep disorders. With years of experience in the field, Walsh developed effective protocols that can help individuals get the restful and rejuvenating sleep that they need to lead healthy and fulfilling lives. Lana, welcome to Bridge City News.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to chat with you today.
Of course. Now, first off, can you just share your experience in your quest for sleep?
Yeah, well, my quest for sleep lasted a really long time, about 30 years.
Wow.
I remember as a kid tossing and turning so much at night, and I'd have to get out of bed to rearrange my clothes because they'd get wrapped tight around me, and it would drive me crazy. And over the years, I started to develop troubles, ongoing troubles with staying asleep. So I'd wake up in the middle of the night and I'd toss and turn for hours. And some nights couldn't go back to sleep at all. So during 30 years, I've been sleep tested. I'd seen a sleep expert. I'd been on a decade's worth of medication with no solution. And then by complete happenstance or maybe divine intervention, I found the solution to insomnia, which is actually the gold standard in treating insomnia now. So using this process of behavior change completely cured my sleeping problems. And it's been an amazing 3 years of sleep. I can't even tell you how incredible the last 3 years have been for me.
Well, I'm really interested in hearing more about that. But what was the feeling like of not being able to find that really helpful rest?
Well, I tell you, there's a lot of things that happen when you don't sleep at night. First of all, you just feel exhausted all the time. For good sleepers out there, I explain it like if you ever had a newborn baby at home and you remember how exhausting it was every day for the first months that the baby kept waking up every 2 hours to eat, that's what insomnia is like. Even when you have a good night's sleep, because you get those every once in a while too, you still feel exhausted all the time.
Right.
But some of the ways that it affects you, though, is mostly in your brain. Like your brain is most affected by sleep. It happens quickly too. Like one night of bad sleep will make you moody. I was very irritable. You didn't even want to look at me in the mornings because I might take your head off. I was just so grumpy all the time, right? But you get brain fog. Your memory kind of goes. One of the biggest things that I noticed when I started sleeping better was my memory. Because I would have a conversation just like this, and I would come up to a word that I wanted to say, and I couldn't think of the word.
Oh.
And then now I don't have that problem anymore. Or if, I had a stressful night and maybe had a bad night's sleep for whatever reason, that'll come back right away. That's the first thing I notice that goes for me. So there's just like your brain it really affects the brain when you can't get a good night's sleep.
Now, this must have been a challenge for your family. Like, what can you tell us about the impact of lack of sleep and our relationships?
Yeah, well, like I said, I was grumpy and irritable all the time. You did not even want to make a joke about me being tired. You didn't want to make I'm not a morning person. You're not a morning person. You said that to me. I wanted to punch you in the throat. I really did. You don't have patience. So there's an American Academy of Psychology found that getting less than 8 hours of sleep made you almost twice as likely to lose your patience and yell at your kids. So because you're irritable all the time and you don't feel good and you have no energy, you just don't care. You have this, I don't care what you want. I don't care about anything. Just shut up and don't talk to me. Don't look at me feeling. And when you're doing that with people that you love the most, it can be really hurtful.
Now, what about workplace relationships? Is there like a way to tell when a coworker has a lack of ability to sleep?
Yeah. So one of the ways you might notice it is people that are drinking lots of extra coffee in the afternoon, because in the afternoon our energy levels dip automatically, even if you are a good sleeper. But if you're a poor sleeper, that afternoon dip is very significant to the point where they might be falling asleep at their desk or in a meeting, right? They're moody. Their moods will go up and down depending on how well they slept the night before. So you'll notice that as well. They do small mistakes, like they're sending that email without the attachment regularly, or hitting reply all instead of just reply, like those kinds of little mistakes. They will be a little bit irritable or grumpy. They might snap in certain situations, especially if there's a difficult client or difficult coworker. They're less able to handle that. They may take longer to complete tasks, like something that would normally take them, they would do pretty quickly, and all of a sudden it's taking them longer. Extra sick days. I probably took twice as many sick days as the average person because I just have such bad nights of sleep that I just couldn't function. So those would be some of the things that you would notice.
So in the workplace, do you think that there are things that employers or coworkers might be able to do to help a colleague that has insomnia?
Well, I think the biggest thing to do is to just, when people are saying, I'm tired all the time, is to ask them, what's that about? How long has that been going on? Is there, and ask them if they're sleeping okay, directly ask them. Because I can tell you in my experience, I didn't tell people I had insomnia. I talk to people now who worked with me 10, 15 years ago, and they say, I had no idea you had insomnia, Lana. So I never told anybody. It's not, you can't phone into work and say, I didn't sleep last night, so I can't come into the office. It's not perceived as a valid excuse to take time off.
So how do you open up that conversation then? Saying I have insomnia, at work?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I would just ask them when somebody's saying to you, I'm tired all the time, I would just ask them, well, how are you sleeping? And, do you know if you're getting enough sleep, or do you know if maybe that might be a problem for you? Because I knew I had insomnia. I was reading everything I could find online, but I couldn't find a solution. And if you know somebody that could help them, then give them the opportunity to say, hey, I know this is bad. I know how hard it is, but you know what? I heard about this person who helps people do this, and give them that opportunity. Because if I told somebody, actually, I should say this. The one time I told my boss that I had trouble sleeping, she asked me why I couldn't just close my eyes and go to sleep at night. That's the kind of advice you get from people who don't understand what's happening. And so you don't tell anybody because there's no reason to tell them. So if you're listening to this, you can say to people, hey, you know what? I know somebody who's actually a specialist in this and can maybe help you, because what I do is considered the gold standard in treating insomnia, but it's only been that standard since 2016. So lots of medical professionals out there don't even know about this treatment.
So let's talk a little bit about the treatment now, because you've obviously overcome a lot of things, and I really want to hear more about that.
Yeah, so what research has come to realize is that insomnia is a learned behavior. What happens is we start out having trouble sleeping for a variety of reasons. Mostly it's stress related. Stress is the number one reason people can't sleep, and even good sleepers will have trouble sleeping when they're under stress, and that's completely normal. But when we have trouble sleeping and it goes on for weeks or months, what happens for a certain part of the population is they start to get frustrated and anxious, and then they anticipate not sleeping. So then every day they're thinking about sleep all the time, and am I going to sleep tonight? And is tonight the night I'm finally going to get a good night's sleep? And because we're so exhausted every day, we start to engage in a bunch of behaviors and habits to help us survive, but actually contribute to our insomnia.
Oh.
So then what happens is our subconscious brain starts to associate bed and nighttime with being awake. So just like Pavlov's dog learned to salivate at the sound of a bell, we've done the same thing with sleep. For insomniacs, we get this hyperactive part of our brain that won't shut down at night. And it just keeps us awake through the night. And so the treatment is to reprogram that subconscious brain. And that involves sleep education. So just understanding that little bit, right, helps. It's understanding how sleep works, why things are happening the way they're happening, and why you should do something different, specific strategies to do at night, and then stress reduction and relaxation techniques. That's the whole process into a step-by-step plan that gets you back on track.
So how does technology affect our sleep and our ability to sleep? Because a lot of us we'll go to bed and we'll stare at our phones, we'll check our Facebook, we'll check our Twitter, we'll do a bunch of Instagram stuff, and that's probably not really healthy for us, isn't it?
Yeah. So there's the one side of it is blue light affects melatonin production. It can stop melatonin production. So on that hand, blue light too close to your eyes has that effect on you. So use the night vision, or where you turn it to a black screen, or blue light blocking lenses can help that. The bigger problem with using your phone and being on Instagram is scrolling has been shown to give you a dopamine hit, which elevates your senses, it elevates your excitement, it makes you energized. So it gives you a boost as opposed to helping you calm down and relax. The other issue with certain media is it can also be stressful, right? If depending on what you're consuming at night, I tell people all the time, whether it's on a phone, in a book, a TV show, you have to be careful of what you consume at night. Don't have those really deep conversations with your spouse in bed. Don't do work at night, because it really activates your brain and it can cause a stress reaction. And that stress reaction is part of the reason why people can't sleep. So be careful of what you consume at night, not just because of the blue light, but because of the information that's coming out of that device that you're looking at.
So prior to going to bed, is there a certain amount of time you should shut off your phone or put it away before going to bed? Would you say an hour, 2 hours? What would you recommend?
Well, I recommend at least an hour, but it's really up to you. I also tell people, if watching TV helps you go to sleep at night, then watch TV, right? I don't want people to just all of a sudden change their habits because, of some recommendation. I want you to get your best sleep. So do the thing that helps you go to sleep, but you should be doing something relaxing. If you're not giving yourself that opportunity to settle down, to get out of active functioning time to go to sleep, it's going to be harder to go to sleep. So I do recommend like a half an hour, shut off your phone and do something relaxing like reading, because that will help your brain settle down and get into that mode of ready to sleep, because it needs that time to just come down from the day.
Right. So we've talked about taking technology away, like an hour before sleeping. What are like other things that can help someone fall asleep and have a good night's rest?
Well, I think one of the biggest things you can do is stick to a routine. When your circadian rhythm runs on a 24-hour clock. And so when you disrupt that rhythm by going to bed later or sleeping in or going to bed too early, it really disrupts that natural rhythm. So the first thing is to pick a bedtime and stick to it. And then give yourself a routine of things that you do before bed that you do every time you go to bed. Because your brain craves that routine, and it will start to learn, just like we learned how not to sleep, it will learn over time that, okay, this is the pattern that we follow before we go to sleep. So for me, it doesn't matter what time I go to bed. If I was out drinking and partying, I read at least 15 minutes before bed. I might not remember what I read, but I'll do it. But I read at least 15 minutes before bed because that is my routine and it actually puts me to sleep.
Oh.
So just finding that thing that you do and do it over and over and over again, and that will help you fall asleep faster.
Wow. Okay. So Lana, we're just about out of time, but if viewers want to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, well, I'm on all the social channels at Lana Walsh Coaching, and my website is lanawalshcoaching.ca. So you can find me on any of those, and I'd be happy to chat with you if you want.
Great. Well, that was Lana Walsh. She joined us from her office in Lethbridge. I'm Naveen Day. On behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News, thanks for watching.